What if everything you thought about the music industry to be true was wrong?
Oh, hell no!
Musicians have been trying to warn fans for years, and this video exposes everything. First up is Billy Corgan from the infamous band The Smashing Pumpkins.
Yeah, the music business plays this Jedi mind trick on you, where the whole thing's set up to be rapacious and take advantage of your weakness. If you get success and you have leverage, they'll get out of your way because you're making them a lot of money. But the minute you're not making them as much money, then they step in and they start playing these Jedi mind tricks on you.
What Billy means by leverage is if you've got record sales, you've got ticket sales, you've built a fan base, you can go to the label and you can demand a higher advance, or you can leverage and get better terms on the deal. The problem is so many artists haven't built these things yet. They go ask a label for a deal and then they get taken advantage of. But let's keep going.
You know what to do. You know, the public's going to forget about you. I mean, I've heard all these things like, yeah, you're in the room, but we're the arbiter of whether you can stay in the room. They do these 360 deals where it's like,
right,
if you get a perfume deal, if you, like your whole world,
they own you.
We own a piece of your whole world. And fame is such a great quotient in American life now that you can see where kids would trade fame and be willing to give away like profit part.
We signed what's called a licensing deal, so the label had ownership to my albums for 6 years, but then I got my albums back. Unlike a lot of artists where they get money up front, but then the label owns them forever. Just imagine you bought a house and you paid off the mortgage only to find out that the bank still owns the home. You can get a better loan from a drug dealer than you can from a record label, but this next part makes me cringe.
Look no further than the deals that the record labels cut with the streaming services. They got into ownership equity deals with the streaming services. In an arrangement for them to have an equity position, they agreed to very low rates for the artist's music. As Spotify and the other streaming services raise up in their equity position, the labels benefit. So the labels pimped out their own artist to take a greater equity position in a rising business.
Now we can get all upset about the deal that Spotify struck with the labels, or we can do something about it. Spotify is a publicly traded company. Have you invested in Spotify stock and become an owner too? I use Apple products all the time. This phone, my laptop. Have you invested in Apple stock? Let me know in the comments below. I bought the iPod when it first came out for $300 for tour. If I had invested $300 in Apple stock, today it'd be worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. It's time for us as creators to stop just using the products and become investors ourselves. Here's Chester Bennington from Linkin Park on what he has to say about record contracts.
I don't know if most people have seen long-form contracts. They're insane, and there's all these little things thrown in. It's kind of like legislating, legislature for a government. They put up this big issue, but underneath that issue, there's like 17 other little laws that they threw in that they're not talking about. So when you say yes to this one thing, you're actually saying yes to like 45 other things.
So get an entertainment lawyer before you sign anything. But what about new bands coming up? Can you still make it?
Yeah, Metallica is a big exception. A lot of metal bands you've heard of that you consider very successful metal bands are in situations where they need to diversify. The idea, that we all had as kids, we're going to make it. Our one band that we're in is going to make us all this money and be our sole source of income. I think that's gone for the most part, unless you're very, very lucky. That's not the case.
Diversify mean if you sign with a record label, you ain't gonna make it on record sales alone unless you're making millions. You gotta diversify. You gotta have multiple streams of income. But don't let this discourage you, all right? Because you can be super successful without a record label.
There are younger bands that don't have the draw that we do. It's incredibly difficult. It really is. For bands that don't understand or that don't fully take advantage of how the machine actually works, it's incredibly difficult. Every band needs to really pay attention to what their record contract says. They look at what their royalty rate is. If you realize you're getting 0.07 cents for every stream, and your contract only says that you get 15 points on the record after you've recouped
There's a lot of zeros after that decimal.
Exactly. So it just keeps on being reduced and reduced and reduced and reduced, and you have to really pay attention to it. You have to negotiate, you have to hardball, and you have to try and improvise and adapt and overcome.
So you get 15 to 20% of the record sales, but you don't know what expenses they're deducting, you don't know what other things that they're calculating, and you don't see a full report. And this doesn't include the 15 or 20% you also have to give to a manager. So if you sign a record deal, you need to make sure that they can make the pie bigger. That means if you can sell 10,000 albums on your own, then they should be able to help you sell 100,000 albums, which is fine. We want a fair deal, because I would much rather have 50% of a watermelon than 100% of a grape.
I was recording the albums myself in my own studio. The way I looked at it, I owned the work because I paid for it. And I did all the work, I created it, so I felt like it should belong to me. That said, the companies felt otherwise, and they would always hold this contract up and say, well, you signed it. And I say, well, I understand that. It's not like I want to leave. I just want to, talk about this thing and see if we can't make it more fair. Of course, they wouldn't change, because if they changed, they wouldn't really exist. It shouldn't be a situation where they own the album or the work. We're talking about intellectual copyright. If they're going to be indeed a delivery service, then that's fine. But even FedEx doesn't say that they own the thing that they ship.
I'm an independently owned artist. I kept my publishing, all the things that I could have done smart, believe it or not. I learned from street level in what I call the, bar none, the music business. I have some great friends, but bar none is the sleaziest business in the world. It's a business where there's 50 ways to get rich and rock the world, and there's 50 ways to get screwed from just one incident.
So what do you think? You still want to be in the music business? Do you still want to sign a record deal, or do you want to stay independent? Let me know in the comments below. But I want you to know that you got greatness within you. You have talent inside you. You didn't get into the music because you wanted to make the money, but you do need to learn the business. That's why I encourage you to read the book, The Truth About the Music Business, what every artist wished they knew before they signed a record deal. I want to remind you that a fighter isn't someone who never fails. A fighter is someone who never quits. So keep chasing this music dream, no matter what the haters say, your friends, your family, I don't care. You keep chasing this dream.